What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another mailbag. Today we're going to be answering 25 of your questions. Now, I posted a prompt over in our Discord for you to ask mailbag questions on. If you're not in our Discord, what are you waiting for? There's a link in the description box below. That is the main place for the Blazers Uprise community, and we've done a lot of things to improve it and upgrade it. I talked more about those things in my last video, the one that has contenders on the thumbnail, which is the first time I've ever put the word contenders in a Blazer thumbnail. So definitely go watch that video so you can learn more about the Discord. But I also scripted that video. I thought it was a pretty good video, so if you haven't seen it, my feelings are hurt. I'm just kidding. But there's game threads in there. We had 1,300 messages in the last one, so it popped off. We have a gaming section. You guys can talk to me and Eric through there. And it's the easiest way to keep updated with everything that we're doing here at Blazers Uprise. So definitely go join that Discord server. Now let's jump into your questions. As I've said before, I barely edit these, so it's not going to be super clean, but I don't care. With the first question, Chris S. asks, one of Chauncey's big objectives for the season was to get out and run, but we're one of the worst transition offenses in the league and dead last in effective field goal percentage and scoring frequency in that category. Outside of turnovers, what's going wrong and do you think will improve? I think a big reason why the Blazers are struggling is they rely on Josh Hart to get out and push the pace. Dame and Ant haven't really pushed the pace like I was hoping for them to do this season, but just as long as they clean up the turnovers, I don't really have an issue with it. I think that's the bigger problem, and honestly, this team has been so sloppy, I don't know if I want them to speed things up and try and play faster, because a lot of times their turnovers seem to be because they're trying to play too fast already. So I think just looking for the right run-out opportunities, obviously not forcing shots. I think Josh Hart has forced a couple layups in traffic, in transition, that have not been good opportunities, and that can speak to maybe some of the lack of efficiency in that regard. But I think the bench unit needs to run a little bit more. I'm a little bit surprised the bench unit hasn't ran as much, but the Blazers got to keep forcing turnovers. There's a bunch of different things that go into running out, but this has basically been a Dame-led thing, and the Blazers were fine early in the season, and then they've gotten really slow lately. So don't know what the reason is for it. Wish I had a better explanation and a better answer for this question. This is something to watch for maybe in the upcoming games if the Blazers continue to struggle in terms of efficiency and transition. Question number 2, we got Smog, aka Bubble Guppies. He says, how long do you think before Jabari Walker becomes a rotation player? I would give it a couple of years still. He might be able to be one next year, but the Blazers do have some quality forwards now. Jeremy Grant, Josh Hart, Gary Payton II can play a small forward spot. Shaden Sharp could be a small forward. Justice Winslow could still be here. So it's going to be hard for him to break in. It's not that he's not worthy of being a rotation player. He certainly is. It's just a lot of tough players ahead of him. I think he will probably be a spot minutes guy like he has been to start his rookie year for the next couple of years. But the Blazers might be in a position at some point to consolidate some of that forward depth and be able to clear a rotation spot for Jabari Walker in a trade where they actually go out and get the best player. They get an upgrade because they have multiple pieces they can move. So it's hard to say because he's worthy, but for the first time ever, the Blazers don't need a young 3-and-D forward to play minutes every single night. I wish we had Jabari Walker back when we were playing Anthony Tolliver and Mario Hezonja. That would have been awesome. By the way, the first 5 questions are from channel members, so thanks to them for being channel members. Their names are green for a reason. If you want to become a channel member, click that join button below, and if you're a channel member and in the Discord and your name is not green yet, let me know in the Discord server what your YouTube username is so I can give you the channel member role in the Discord server. But shout out to Blazers OC, aka Oscar, who says, with the depth being so great right now and GP2 coming back, what would be a consolidation trade that you'd be cool with? Also, who would you trade and for who? Gotta keep good vibes too. Yeah, the locker room matters, and this is a perfect follow-up question to what I was talking about in the last answer, but any consolidation trade would involve the small forward spot. Josh Hart has kind of struggled as a scorer and as a shooter in that role. I think some of that has to do with the concussion that Hart got around the start of November, but obviously that's the weakest link in the starting lineup. Some people would say it's Jusuf Nurkic, but going out and getting a better center is not easy because the only centers that are head and shoulders above Jusuf Nurkic are all-stars. Bam Adebayo, Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, guys like that, and it's not easy to go out and get those guys, and the Blazers probably shouldn't be wasting assets there. Pretty much every other big man is inconsistent at best, so I wouldn't look at really doing anything with the center spot. If something that makes the team better comes along and it's a no-brainer, sure, you do it, but a consolidation trade at the small forward spot makes the most sense. I'm not quite sure as to what the target should be. OG Anunoby has always been thrown out there, but other than that, there's really no obvious guy. I would prefer a guy that can handle the ball a little bit. That would be nice to have, but 3-and-D for sure. Being able to guard at the point of attack, be a good on-ball defender. But still, I don't know if you want somebody entrenched long-term because the hope is that Shane Sharp could maybe be that starting small forward in the next couple of years. So the Blazers are in a good position right now, which is weird to be talking about trades when the Blazers are not struggling for forward depth or something like that. But yeah, definitely will have more on this as we get into the season and closer to the trade deadline. It's just hard to even address what the Blazers should or could do right now. Dicky CST says, what do you think is leading to the Blazers having an increasing amount of turnovers? Is it due to a change of play style, David Simons trying to be more aggressive passer to thread the needle, or just careless, effortless mistakes? I think it's more so the careless mistakes category. We had that stretch against San Antonio Spurs. About 6 turnovers in a row were just guys throwing it to nobody. Nasir Little threw it to a ref or a fan. I don't know. He threw it to absolutely nobody on one play. And then Josh Hart throwing it into the third row because he panicked while getting token pressure. And then Nasir Little had a pass that I think was to Nurkic, but it was a little bit off. And Nurkic thought it was to somebody behind him and just stepped out of the way of it. And it went out of bounds. Like, just stuff like that are the silly turnovers that the Blazers are having. Some of them is just, your typical driving too deep, trying to kick out, and then that pass gets tipped or blocked, or a pocket gets picked here or there. Those type of things will always happen in the course of any game, so that's not really anything to worry about, in my opinion, but the Blazers just had a lot of silly mistakes this year. It's very frustrating. Shout out Clearly a Bot, who has 2 mailbag questions. He says, 1, can a team have more than one person in the dunk contest per year? And does Greg Brown being in the G League change his chances? I wouldn't expect Greg Brown to be in the dunk contest. He's just not high profile enough, and Shaedon Sharpe would be the obvious guy to be in the dunk contest for a Blazer, from a Blazer standpoint. But then question number 2 says, it's looking like Sharpe isn't going to get the minutes for Rookie of the Year, but is there space for him to make all-rookie first team? Absolutely. Every rookie ladder I see has Sharpe like 5th or 6th, so that's the cutoff line for the all-rookie first team. There's going to be guys that are obviously going to make it that are playing more. Ben Mathurin, Paolo Banchero, Jaden Ivey being the 3 most obvious ones, but outside of that, there isn't anybody that's an obvious choice unless I'm completely forgetting someone. Jabari Smith might make it just because he's playing a lot, but he hasn't been efficient so far to start this year, so Sharpe definitely has a chance to make all-rookie first team. Pineapple says initial impressions on Winslow were that he never showed signs of improvement. Has that changed? Is he the same player, or is he just thriving in a system that best suits him? I think it's more of the latter. Efficiency-wise, he's still not efficient. From 2, from 3, from the free throw line, like, he still struggles to make shots. Everything else is solid, and it's been solid. He's been a good passer. He's been somebody that can defend. He's been somebody that can rebound, and he's generally been considered a smart player. The Blazers, with their flow-style offense, an actual flow-style offense, Winslow fits into that. So I still think he gets a little bit overrated. The Blazers in the past just haven't really had a defensive forward like him, so Blazer fans appreciate it for sure, and you know, he's brings a lot to the table, but he still has his offensive flaws, and those flaws can rear their head in a playoff series. So I'm cool with what he's done, with what he's doing here. I still don't know if that's not a position I would look to improve, though. Obviously, you would need a specific player that provides a lot of what Winslow provides, and that is hard to find. So he's just a unique player. He's been a unique player. I don't think he's necessarily improved. He just found a team in a situation that needs what he provides, and he fits into the system. Shout out to our mod Zach, who says, with this team being as good as it is already, do you think Gary Payton II has more value to us as a player or a trade asset? I don't think GP2 has much value to us as a trade asset. His value comes more in the fact that he can be that on-ball defender that we need. It would be very nice to be able to have somebody that you could trust to put up against a Luka Doncic or somebody like that, and you don't necessarily have to send a double team every time. So Gary Payton II should have a lot of value to the Portland Trail Blazers off the bench as a defensive weapon that can help keep this defense in the top 10. In terms of trade value, though, he only has one legitimate season in terms of a body of work with Golden State last year, and he's injured right now, so I don't think he would have a lot of trade value. If a team is desperate for defense, he could, but I think this Portland team has been the team that's been desperate for defense. Now they have enough defense and could still use more of it. Wizard Tears says, how can we re-sign Jerami Grant? What can we offer him, and what teams do you think will throw the bag at him? The Blazers can re-sign Jerami Grant for an extension that's up to $112 million over 4 years, and they're able to sign that extension, I believe, 6 months after they trade for him, so that extension possibility should be coming up soon. They can't extend him yet. Eric knows a little bit more of the exact dates in regards to extensions. I know my CBA. Eric gets regarded as a CBA guy. I know my CBA. The one part where I'm a little bit foggy on is extensions and all the weird rules that go around when you can extend guys and how much you can extend them for at specific points in the year and all that sort of stuff. But if the Blazers wait till free agency and then re-sign Jerami Grant, they can sign him to a max. And the Blazers could end up having a handshake deal where they re-sign Jerami Grant to a max in the offseason, especially if he keeps playing this way, where Jerami Grant hits free agency, but he comes back, just like Yusuf Nurkic free agency and came back. But at this point, I would re-sign Jerami Grant for 4 years, $112 million. He might be playing his way above that, though. M123 Dame says, do you think Anthony Simons or Jerami Grant can be an all-star this season, and do you think our team will improve when Gary Payton II plays, especially for our defense? Gary Payton II will definitely help the Blazers defense. As far as the all-star thing goes, I think Jerami Grant is more likely because you don't have as much competition for him in terms of front court players as Anthony Simons does in the West with backcourt players. You got SGA, John Morant, Devin Booker, Steph Curry, Damian Lillard. I think all those guys are shoo-ins at this point, and you can only have up to 6 backcourt players, I believe. So it would have to get that final spot. Maybe there's an injury designation or something like that, but it would be extremely difficult for Anthony Simons to make the All-Star game. Jerami Grant has been playing about as good as Anthony Simons. He's been more efficient. He's actually probably been better, especially on the defensive end as well. So Jerami Grant is more likely, not as much competition, arguably playing better than Anthony Simons, statistically about the same. So Jerami Grant, I think, could definitely be an all-star this year. Neon Pong says, you become Billups in the 2025-2026 season. Keep the current roster that we have now, and everyone ages and develops as expected. Who starts and becomes strong key pieces off the bench? What does the minutes distribution look like? I would probably have a starting lineup of Dame, Ant, Sharp, Grant, and then Nurkic would probably still be around. You don't really have another option there. I still think Nurkic will be solid in 2025-2026, but who knows? And then off the bench, probably still got Josh Hart. He's young enough. You got Gary Payton II, Nasir Little, and Jabari Walker. I think would probably be the first 4 key pieces off the bench, but the problem is who's the backup center. That's kind of an issue there, so I guess you'd still have Watford or Eubanks. Yeah, it would be really hard to say because I would like those 4 guys over any other 4 guys off the bench at that point over, a Justice Winslow. I think Jabari will be better than him when that season comes along, but it's hard to say. It's hard to say because the center position is not really set up long term. No Name 3706 says, if this team is a top 4 seed and Dame plays the way he did to start the year, do you think he has a good chance of being MVP over guys like Giannis and Embiid? I think it would be really difficult unless Dame gets that scoring average up to 30 points per game. You have a lot of players right now averaging over 30 points per game. Luka, SGA, Donovan Mitchell was, I don't know if he still is, and the Cavs have been looking good, so, and I know I'm missing a couple of guys there, so Dame has to get his statistical production up. His assists per game have risen to about 6.5, but he doesn't need to score the ball like he used to. He doesn't need to have 50, 60-point games where he's shooting 30-foot threes, and that's a good thing, and that might increase his chances of winning MVP because the team is better and winning a lot of games, but in the end, I don't think the stats will be high enough for him to truly get over the hump and win an MVP, but I could be wrong. It's just tough in today's NBA with a lot of stars putting up astronomical numbers. Tayeka says, if there even are any, what acquisition do you think would make the most sense for the team right now? I talked about the consolidation trade earlier. I don't know what trades make sense right now. It's November 17th and this team is 10-4. Maybe they don't keep up this record and we're talking about more drastic changes, but if they're first in the West in February, it's going to be hard to say we should change anything because why would you mess with something that's working? Instead, it might be adding a depth piece or I don't know, or somebody's hurt. So it's really hard to say right now. I know this community loves talking trades and we usually have you guys covered on trades because we know our CBA and we'll go in depth on things, but normally that waits until, December, January, February, depending on how the season goes. So we're going to have to hold off a little bit longer. Bun says, do you think a top 3 seed is maintainable, assuming the turnover problem doesn't get much better? I think it is. I mean, they've won games missing guys against good teams on a road-heavy schedule against one of the harder schedules in the league. They're 10-4, so they've been doing that, turning over the ball. It's hard to say that's not sustainable. And then, will Josh Hart find his rhythm offensively, or will he just stick to being a defense and passing guy for this team? I hope he does. I still think there's something off, and he had that concussion, and then he just falls so hard, man, that I wonder if there's been some other times he's hit his head and maybe we don't know about it. I don't know, but he had a good game against the Pelicans, had 17, and then followed that up with like an 0 for 9 performance, so he's just inconsistent and not confident enough offensively, so it's hard to speculate as to whether a guy finds his confidence in his shot and rhythm and that sort of thing, but it would definitely help this Blazer team be even better. Reese says, and sorry this text is so small, but I read it off anyway. Reese says, lineups with Eubanks and without Winslow have an offensive rating of 130 and defensive rating of 140 in an 89-minute sample, not garbage time. But when they play together, they have an offensive rating of 115 and a defensive rating of 109 in 127 minutes of non-garbage time. Would you say this is a noisy stat, or Winslow seriously covers up for Drew's defensive deficiencies? I feel like a big part of that 89-minute sample with the defensive rating of 141 for Eubanks and no Winslow came against Dallas when they had 4 threes in a row in a very short period of time. That obviously is going to make that look a little bit worse, and Eubanks was gassed at that point, but Eubanks I think has been okay. He's not as good of a defender as Jusuf Nurkic is, and I don't understand people that think he's as good of a defender as Jusuf Nurkic is. Winslow is definitely key for this team defensively, and it could be a case where Winslow is covering for his deficiencies. I think you would just have to see Eubanks play in more lineups and wait till those lineups get enough of a statistical sample size that you can compare and contrast them with other lineups, and then you could see, okay, Eubanks playing with Winslow really helps him because every other lineup that Eubanks is in without Winslow, even if he's playing next to solid defenders, are still bad in terms of defensive rating. So I think it's still a little bit too early to put much stock into lineup stats like that. I think, you definitely gotta wait until it gets around, 120, 130, 140 minutes The second stat is more of a sample size, and it makes more sense. O rating of 115, D rating of 109. The first stat, I still think you need more sample on that. It would be interesting to track that, and I'm sure you will, because I know you know your analytics, Reese, so definitely follow up with that in, a couple of weeks if you remember. Embarking Box says, who's likely to get their minutes cut when GP2 is ready to play? I would guess Nas, unfortunately, because his minutes have just not increased, even when he's played well, and then defensively, Nas has regressed on the ball, in my opinion. So, Nas would be my best guess right now. He kind of seems like the last guy in the rotation at this current point, and GP2, I think, will be more impactful because he will be a better on-ball defender. That's what they were looking for out of Nas, and Nas, unfortunately, hasn't provided that. Badian says, what's the spacing of this team look like long-term? Is the bench's shooting really good enough for the postseason? And then give some additional context that you can read. But I think the spacing is good enough. I think the shooting off the bench might be a problem, but I mean, Shaedon Sharpe shooting over 40%, Nas shooting 40%. If those regress, sure, maybe it's an issue, but Gary Payton II shot 36% last year, so when he comes back, hopefully he can continue that. I wouldn't be worried about it yet. It might become a problem. It might be something that needs to be addressed at the trade deadline, but right now it looks fine. Obviously, Winslow's not a good shooter. Eubank's not a good shooter, so if Nas and Sharpe regress and Gary Payton II isn't as good of a shooter as he was last year, then yeah, you could be looking at a trade around the trade deadline for maybe a stretch 4 or stretch 5, or maybe Jabari Walker gets more of a chance. It's Felix says, everyone thought the Blazers would only make the play-in by the end of the season, but now they are the first seed, so my question is, where do you think the Blazers will finish by the end of the season? At this point, I would say top 4. Robbie says, do you think Gary Payton overperformed last year because of the Warriors' great system, or do you think he'll play like that for the Blazers? Also, what are the odds, in your opinion, that Shaedon will be better than Simons in the future? I think it's about 50-50 odds on Shaedon being better than Simons in the future, because Simons still has room for growth, and he's already phenomenal. And then, as far as Gary Payton goes, I don't think he necessarily overperformed because of the Warriors' great system. I just think he's a guy that needs to play in a specific system offensively that doesn't just park him in the corner. He needs to play in a system with movement, with flow, that the Blazers showed earlier this season have kind of gotten a little bit away from, but I'm hopeful that Gary Payton comes in and is able to be utilized offensively by this Blazer team. Robbie says, what is your opinion on our defense this year, and do you think we can keep a top 10 defense throughout the year? Also, do you expect our offense to get better? Yes to both of those questions. The Contenders video that I dropped goes in depth on both sides of the ball. David C says, if you had to bet on a record through 82 games for the Blazers, what's your record prediction after the first 14 games, assuming everyone stays healthy, and how different is it from your predictions before the season started? I was predicting like 45 wins before the season. Now I'm going to go out on a limb and predict 53 and 29. PNW Dev, I wanted to give you a shout out, so appreciate you asking the question, but already kind of touched on this. Jake the Snakes 21 says, who is the most ideal trade candidate? Everybody wants to talk about trades, man. I don't know. OG, I guess. But I don't know. Let's just wait. Let's just wait until December or January. We'll have mailbags discussing trades, and we'll have a lot of trade content then. It's still too early, and this team is looking good. I wouldn't focus too heavily on trades right now. Matt Johnson says, is there a possible trade? Matt Johnson says, is there a possible trade the Blazers could make around the deadline that would send Nurkic for Miles Turner? No, Nurkic plus stuff for Miles Turner. And if so, would you be interested in that kind of deal? No, I wouldn't trade Nurkic for Miles Turner straight up. For all the people that want to trade Nurkic for Miles Turner, I want to see how they react to starting Miles Turner next to Jerami Grant and giving up, 20 offensive rebounds per game, because Miles Turner is a terrible rebounder for a center, and Jerami Grant's a bad rebounder for a power forward. The rebounding would be a serious issue, but that's something nobody focuses on with Nurkic. Nurkic is a phenomenal rebounder, but he doesn't get enough credit for it. But he gets called lazy if he's not moving fast enough his first game back from an injury. So our last post-game show, we ranted about it. So, yeah, I don't know. The Nurkic hate in his first game back from an injury was a little bit too much. I don't know why we're talking about trading Nurkic right now. Nurkic plus assets for Miles Turner doesn't do anything for this team, and we just lose assets, and the rebounding gets worse, and then what? Bobo84 says, what's your all-time favorite player starting 5, Blazer or non-Blazer? Brandon Roy's in it. Damian Lillard's in it. On top of that, I don't know, maybe Shaedon Sharpe is in it at the starting 3. I came up on the Brandon Roy teams, but none of those players were necessarily my favorite or anything. Nurkic probably been my favorite center so far, and then power forward, I mean, it's early, but Jerami Grant. That's Dame, Roy, Sharpe, Grant, Nurk. That's pretty much our team minus Brandon Roy. Area 50 Simax says, Grant, Winslow, Eubanks are free agents after this year. Can they re-sign them all as a deserved raise? Who do you give up to retain? I would not sign Eubanks to more than the minimum. Like, he's been solid, but you can get solid centers on a minimum. Winslow, the Blazers, I think they have some sort of bird rights on him. They should be able to offer him up to about $10 million a year at least if they have his early bird rights. If they have his full bird rights, they can resign him to whatever. Grant, they'll be able to resign to whatever. Winslow on a cheap deal is fine. Eubanks on a minimum is fine. Grant, I would sign up to a max right now. Anyway, that wraps up your questions from the past week. In about a week and a half, we should have another mailbag. We'll get that back to a Monday, and I think Eric will be on that. So I'll have another prompt in the Discord for mailbag questions when that time comes around. We'll be doing a post-game show later tonight. A watch party on Saturday is the plan right now, so definitely tune in for that. And thank you for all the support that you've given us so far in this successful start of the season for the Portland Trail Blazers. We'll catch you next time. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.